From now on, we will study about constituting a negative clause with the general verb. First, the adverb not describes the modal verb to emphasize the definition of the general verb, so that the adverb not describes the definition of the general verb indirectly. There is an example. He does not open the door. The adverb not describes the modal verb, which is another adverb, does. Modal verb does described by the adverb not describes the transitive verb open. There is a reason for it. Let's consider about the opposite situation, that the adverb not describes the definition of the verb directly. Then the clause will convey the definition like a subject is a condition, indicated by the definition of the verb open. The clause conveys the vague condition except specific action is very vague. So the adverb not describes the modal verb does to emphasize the definition of the verb. The adverb not makes this clause convey the condition of the subject to be in a condition to remain in the closed condition, which is the opposite to the action indicated by the general verb open. Emphasizes the definition of the verb open, and the adverb makes the emphasized definition of the verb right opposite of the original definition. So we can think of the opposite condition of an emphasized action to remain in a static condition, which is much more specific than condition except an action. The adverb not to describe the definition of the general verb open conveys the vague intention that the condition of the subject is described as any condition except the action indicated by the phrase of the verb open the door. So the speaker avoids the constitution of a clause that the adverb not describes the general verb directly. To constitute a negative clause with the be verb. Let's study about constituting a negative clause with the be verb. The be verb to describe the existence of the subject is described by the adverb not directly. The opposite definition of the clause to state that a subject exists is the only one, as that the subject does not exist. The opposite definition of the existence is only one, the non-existence. There is not any other option to convey the opposite intention except the non-existence of the subject. There is an exemplary clause. It is not. The adverb not describes the be verb to describe the existence of the subject, and the clause with the adverb not describes the non-existence of the subject. The be verb to describe the condition of the subject with the trait of the adverb conveys the vague intention with the direct description of the adverb not. The speaker intends to the vague The vague intention is that the subject exists in a condition that is not indicated by the subjective complement. The fact that the subject exists is true, that cannot be denied, but the adverb not denies the condition described by the subjective complement. There is an exemplary clause. We are not living. So, the existence of the subject indicated by the personal pronoun we is true. The condition of the subject described by the subjective complement living to describe indirectly because the present participle living has the trait of an adverb is except the condition indicated by the present participle living. The be verb described by the adverb not describes that the subject exists in a condition that is not indicated by the present participle living as the subjective complement. So the listeners can consider that the condition of the subject is any condition except the condition indicated by the present participle living. We can figure out that almost every clause in English is in the positive clause. The speaker conveys the intention with the positive clause without the adverb not to avoid the ambiguity. The phrase of the modal verb do not to describe the be verb in the imperative clause. The imperative clause is in the urgent situation. The speaker conveys the imperative clause only to the listeners. The speaker is in an urgent situation, so the speaker abbreviates, indicated by the personal pronoun you. The imperative clause is supposed to be conveyed only to the listeners. There is an exemplary clause. Do not be sad. Don't be sad. I signify the abbreviated subject of the imperative clause with the be verb in an imperative clause whose subjects are abbreviated because the clause is conveyed in the urgent situation and the subjects are always the listeners, is described by the phrase of the modal verb do not. Before we consider the effect of the adverb not to make this clause into the negative statement, let's consider the impact of the modal verb do to emphasize the definition of the, in this case, the verb is the be verb. The modal verb do emphasizes a condition that the subjective complement set describes the subject. And the adverb not describes the subject to be in the opposite condition of the condition emphasized by the modal verb do. So, the existence of the subject, listeners, is the premise. And the modal verb do emphasizes the definition of the be verb to describe the existence of the subject, the listeners. And then the adverb not describes into the opposite way. So the speaker conveys the intention to be in the opposite condition of the condition described by the subjective complement said. We will study about the interrogative clause. The interrogative clause conveys the intention of the speaker to ask the clause to the listeners. The speaker arranges the clause to start with the first word to notify the listeners about that the clause conveys the interrogative intention of the speaker. So the listeners can understand the interrogative intention of the speaker only with the first word and prepare the response. An interrogative clause with the general verb is with the modal verb did, do, does, or will. The speaker arranges the modal verb did, do, does, or will to emphasize the definition of the general verb as the first word to start the interrogative clause with the general verb. The modal verb did, does, do, or will reveals the information about the tense, and in the case the clause is described in the present tense, the number of the subject, and whether the subject is a participant in the conversation or not. Plus, the listeners can recognize that the verb of the interrogative clause is one of the general verbs. The modal verb will is applied to start the interrogative clause with the general verb, the be verb. There are exemplary clauses. The first one is that, did you have dinner? The interrogative clause starts with the modal verb did to notify that the clause is about an experience, a condition, or an action in the past. The second exemplary clauses are these. Do you have dinner? Does he have dinner? With the modal verb do or does, the listeners can recognize that the interrogative clause is about the present experience, condition, or action. Plus, the listeners can recognize the number of the subject. The interrogative clause starts with the modal verb do, is about the plural subject or the participant in the conversation. The listeners can recognize that the interrogative clause is about a non-participant in the conversation with the modal verb does. The third exemplary clause is about the future of a subject. The interrogative clause with the be verb starts with the be verb in the clause stated in the past tense, in the clause stated in the present tense. But an interrogative clause with the be verb stated in the future tense starts with the modal verb will. The general verb. Because the be verb has the trait of the adverb, the be verb is arranged as the first word to convey the interrogative intention of the speaker to wonder about the existence of a subject or the condition on the premise that the subject exists. There are exemplary clauses. The form of the be verb, was or were, reveals the number of the subject existed in the past. So the speaker and the non-participant in the conversation, in the current conversation, is described with the form of the be verb was. The plural subject existed in the past are described with the form of the be verb were. As the example 1. The form of the be verb to describe the present existence or condition of the subject differentiated with 3. The be verb to describe the speaker as the subject is signified with the form am. The existence or condition of the plural subject is described with the form of the be verb or. The existence or condition of the singular subject that is not a participant in the conversation is signified with the form of be verb is. The example number 2 is about that. The be verb to describe the existence of a subject in the future is described by the modal verb will. So the speaker arranges the modal verb will as the first word to start the interrogative clause with the be verb, as the example number 1 does. The interrogative clause with the be verb to describe the future existence or condition of a subject does not reveal the information about the subject. So the modal verb and the form of the be verb, be, are same. A negative interrogative clause. The speaker who assures that the definition of the verb is true emphasizes the definition of the verb with the adverb not to describe the modal verb did, do, does, or will, or the be verb to start the interrogative clause. There is a clause, isn't she healthy? The speaker who sets the premise that the subject, indicated by the personal pronoun she, is healthy. But the speaker constitutes the interrogative clause with the adverb not to empower the assurance with the agreement from the listeners. So the response to this interrogative clause signifies whether the definition of the verb without the emphasis by the adverb not is true or not. The two response to this are these. Yes, she is. No, she isn't. The be verb is a proverb to replace the predicate of the interrogative clause is healthy. So the positive response, yes, she is abbreviated from the clause, yes, she is healthy. The negative response to the question is abbreviated from the clause, no, she isn't healthy. To analyze the intention of the listeners we can figure out that this response confirms the condition of the subject accorded with the positive interrogative clause. This response, though she isn't, denies the condition of the subject accorded with the positive interrogative clause. Thank you for watching.